Hey guys, number one Marmaduke fan here. I think this is going to be an Inception video. And what I mean by that is normally, like, kind of in the tradition of your boy Zach, if I'm going to take up 10 minutes of your time, I better have a thesis, which is why I came up with the double manga thing, where if I didn't have like a clear cut little thesis, I could still just like talk about a couple interesting comics. This is going to be a thesis stretched across two videos where each comic kind of gives us a different perspective on the thesis. And that's there are annoying things about some comics where you can come close to doing the annoying thing, but execution is everything. And actually, both of these are both recommends. They're both really good. They're both going to get their own video. But you will see how this idea in Captive Hearts relates to Star Wars, Darth Vader, and the Ghost Person. I can't wait to review Star Wars, Darth Vader, and the Ghost Person. But like Zach, I'm OCD, so let's start with the one I read first. Captive Hearts, Volume 3 by Matsuri Hino, creator of Vampire Knight. So I'm gonna make an effort when I like a manga. I actually make an effort to learn the name. So we've got Megumi the boy and Suzuka the girl. And I read Volume 2. Library didn't have Volume 1. And this is a silly manga. The author knows it's a silly manga. She jokes about how ridiculous it is. I've actually noticed a lot of shoujo artists joke about, ridiculous idea. But Captive Hearts has something that some of the other silly shoujo manga I've read don't have. So I've given up on a few series because I just feel like they're floating around, nothing's happening. The plot contrivances are just there to create tension and drama without actually having tension and drama rooted in the characters. I think that what Matsuri Hino has that maybe some of the other flighty ones don't is, she knows it's silly, but she gives enough to the characters that I say, these are real people. I actually want to see them together. I don't want them to die in a fire because they're annoying. So let's talk about why. So the basic setup is that long ago there was a curse where Megumi's great-great ancestor stole a scroll from Suzuka's great-great ancestor, and now Megumi's family are cursed to serve as slaves to Suzuka's family for 100 generations. And now it's the modern era, so it kind of made sense back in the old feudal era to have slaves and servants around. So what do you do in the modern era? Well, Suzuka disappears, and it turns out she was kidnapped by sex traffickers and rescued and has been living in China. And so Megumi has been living free. He doesn't have to worry about this curse. The last descendant of the master family isn't around, and then she comes to Japan because she's rescued, and boom, he gets hit by the curse all at once. So the comedy comes from him having these manservant fits, where every time he sees her, he immediately goes into manservant mode. He wants to do whatever she tells him, and he's like ridiculously affectionate. So the curse means that he has to obey her orders, but he actually likes her, which means that he's kind of flirty as he serves her. And it's funny because she comes from a very conservative culture. She's from a place in China where it'd be considered obscene to hold hands before marriage. Yet she likes him. So she's got this tension where she comes from a very conservative culture. She really likes him and wants to be with him, and he's all over her all the time, serving her, and she just thinks it's weird. She's a humble girl in a bizarre situation. So that's great. That's a great setup for comedy, but then the characters actually have to be there. So Megumi's mom shows up, and I actually kind of I'm always pointing at the butts, aren't I? But I actually kind of like how Matsuri Hino draws like creases in pants and doesn't like super stylizes them, kind of gives them maybe a little realistic ruffle to them. The secondary characters add to the main tension between the main two. So Megumi's mom, she's in Interpol. She's not really involved in his life that much because she's always at work, like with the FBI investigating sex traffickers. So that means when she's around, she's like super kind of like immature for her age. She's super lovey-dovey and tries to like shower as much affection on her son and husband as she can while she's around, and then she's right back to work hunting for pedophiles. But what I like about her is she has a character that makes sense. She does not like it. She does not like the pedophile, sex trafficking ring. Therefore, she doesn't like this whole curse business. And so she really loves Suzuka, but she says, before I give my blessing to you two being together, you have to find a way to break this curse. That makes perfect sense. So they're actually together. They love each other. They're not stretching a will they, won't they out for 60 volumes. They do want to be together. The question is, can they break the magical super duper curse? All right, I'm in for it. Also, I love these editorial comments. Volume 3 is finally out. So happy I could dance. the point of these is to kind of build rapport with the readers like Stan Lee used to do, and it works. I actually genuinely root for Matsuri Hino just because she shows so much enthusiasm in these comments, and there are a few that actually are really interesting about the motivations of the artist. Kind of ties in with Sean Gordon Murphy writing about how there are multiple motivations for an artist, but we'll get into that. Okay, so interesting observation number 2 is there's a trans character, or at least a transvestite, named Sagara. And Sagara, the boy who kind of dresses in a cutesy Chinese girl dress, kind of gets on Megumi's nerves, because I think Megumi just likes girls. He doesn't like the idea of his best friend suddenly being his best guy friend suddenly being a girl, so this weirds him out. Now, I marked this because Sagara is like mostly there for like comic relief because he annoys Megumi, but then Sagara like helps Megumi out and he figures out that Megumi's life is in danger and gets him back. All right, so Sagara is an example of a character where manga used to really push the boundaries of what you could do in children's art. Like, it'd be really weird to see a trans character appearing in children's media in the 90s or the early 2000s in Western media. So I think a lot of SJWs looked at manga and they said, oh, look, it has lesbians, it has trans characters. This is what we want in our media. But then immediately, almost immediately, it seems like in the course of a couple of years, instantly this became problematic because it's a trans character for comedic purposes. So not only is it, not only do you have to have trans characters, but the representation has to be exactly right. Even if the representation is exactly right, if you're not trans, you're co-opting their culture, and we don't need your cis voice. Looking back, one of the nice things looking back at manga is it pushed the boundaries of what was appropriate, but it did so in a what's the word for it? It did so in a way where it was just, here are some characters. We're not going to like be totally, we're not going to have our panties in a bunch, no pun intended, about how they're represented. We're just going to have them here. We're going to have a couple little gags. They're just going to be part of the story. And they actually don't like make a big deal out of it, except for some of like the little comedic back and forth that Megumi is weirded out because he's used to Sagara being a boy. That's it. There's no lecture, you know? Fine. This would have pushed the boundaries of suburban moms in the late 90s and early 2000s. It's not preaching at me. The character does something nice, and like people like that exist, fine. It doesn't have to be like a big political contentious issue, either from the right or the left. Just a little statement on that. So after kind of like taking a break from the main plot, Matsuri Hino takes a break to talk about the father's backstory and like the backstory of the ancient curse that started all this. And what's really interesting is she explains that at first her editor didn't want to do it. Originally, the story was cut due to space constraints because they said it didn't have anything to do with the main story. However, I decided to divide it into 2 parts, and miraculously it survived. So that's just kind of interesting that they didn't want her to take a 1-chapter break, but she managed to take a 2-chapter break. And both chapters are actually really good. It does feel like, oh, okay, we're taking a break from the main story, but both of them sort of flesh out things a little bit. So the dad kind of tells the story about how when he served Suzuka's mother and father, they saw him as an equal, they saw him as a friend, and they kept working hard to break the curse. So it's sort of like this generational thing that they don't want, in the modern era, people don't like having people subservient to them anymore. They want to break the curse. That's really cool. Oh, editorial comments. So she talks a little bit about, I'm just going to read this. Even though the space is for me to write in, I'm usually too shy and can't think of anything. Because of your support, this silly manga has reached its 3rd volume. It feels like it's gone by so fast. And then her acupuncturist lectured her about taking a break. So this is like a 3-part story where she talks about being stressed. As a mangaka, I'll just sum it up. So she talks about how people were telling her she's too stressed, and then she goes to the hospital. She doesn't say exactly why she went to the hospital, but I'm guessing from the context, she went to the hospital with an ulcer or pretty much due to stress. She gave herself stomach problems. And then from that, she kind of learns the lesson that she's going to try to live a carefree life. But she actually thinks that stress is good for a manga artist to have, and this is what ties into Sean Gordon Murphy. Like, Sean Gordon Murphy's made the argument that, things that motivate an artist, wanting to make money, wanting just sort of the pure joy of mastering a craft, and spite, which is wanting to prove other people wrong. And I guess kind of the interesting point is you don't need to stress yourself and kill yourself to make manga. But if you have stress and you have that kind of antsy personality, I think it's good to channel that into manga, and you'll actually kind of make better art because you're taking your neurotic, nervous, miserable tendencies, and you're slamming that into the page and getting it out of you, and then that actually kind of makes the art better because you've got all this great emotion to draw from. Okay, every time I hear something as simple as I read it, I get so shy and happy and thankful at the same time. I ask myself, doesn't this make you so happy? My answer, yeah, super happy. Laugh to be continued. Appreciation for the fans. Jump ahead a little bit. All right, I love this whole backstory about where the curse came from. So what they tell you at first is that Kuro Nekomaru, the ancestor, was a thief and he stole the dragon scroll, and that's why his family is cursed to serve her family for 100 years. They didn't tell you all the details, and this is a great little fairy tale interlude. And what makes it work is the characters behave like ancient people. They don't behave like 21st century teenagers in old school Chinese, Japanese outfits. They behave like ancient people. So he shows up to steal the scroll, and the girl tries to defend herself with a bow and arrow. He says, I love bold women. You are strong and beautiful. And so she says, oddly enough, so are you. If you find me so pleasing, why not carry me off? So she immediately is attracted to his sort of like raw, bad boy masculinity. But he's not a bad boy. He's actually a good man. So before he says, yeah, I love beautiful things, and he has this great line, my freedom is my wealth. So as he's about to carry her off, she stops him and says, you actually can't do this. I can't abandon my family or myself. They're more important than my own desires. So, this is such great theming. So the theme is she doesn't want to be forced into marriage with the awful rich man, right? But because she's an ancient person, not a contemporary person, things like family, duty, honor, your culture, your history, all of these things weigh on her, and these all become reasons for her to go through with the arranged marriage. So she feels trapped, and she's in contrast to Kuro Nekomaru, who is a roguish thief. His freedom is his wealth. All right, great theming. What is the worst possible thing that could happen to someone whose freedom is his wealth? He loses his freedom. So because he's captivated by her beauty and her strength, he comes back to find her, and the evil husband-to-be has arranged it so he can try to rape her. He sent all the servants away. This is the theme I wanted to talk about earlier, of sometimes like annoying things don't annoy you based on how you execute them. So cutesy little, oh no, someone saved me from the bad man. That's like such a recurring trope in shoujo manga because it's romantic. The hero comes in, he saves the day, he carries you away from the rapist, he beats up the bad guy. That's okay. It becomes creepy and weird when it's sort of transparently obvious, like, oh, you really, really want that to happen to you in real life, don't you? Like, when it's 6 times in a row, the girl is kidnapped and about to be raped in a children's story, that's where I'm starting to say, okay, something's up here. This doesn't feel natural, that this is the kind of thing that will happen to you once in your life. Maybe you have like a 1% chance of that happening. It doesn't happen to you every week. So when she uses an element like that, the character's not being stupid. She's being preyed upon by an evil man. And this is kind of in connection to her problem where she wants to serve her family, she wants to serve her culture, but something evil is being done to her. Kuro Nekomaru is a free man, but because of his love for the beautiful woman, he's willing to risk everything. He's willing to risk his life and his freedom. And so he comes in and says, I've come to carry you off, princess. It's just as I thought. I can't resist beautiful things. And just before it looks like he's about to get shot, she gets shot by the arrow. It's so tragic, and she's gonna die. But then he opens up the dragon scroll and makes a deal with the dragon. If you spare her life, I'll be her servant forever. He loses his freedom. It's tragic. And because this is a good representation of ancient peoples, they don't get together because the mistress of the house doesn't get with the slave boy of the house. She's going to be married to another rich man, but because that makes sense for the culture. They're not pretending that, there's a happy-dappy, super sappy 21st century ending for the fairy tale, but the sort of sweet ending is they both get to live. They both know the other person survives. There's this tragedy where he's lost his freedom, but he's lost it for something good, which is preserving her life. Excellent. I'm such a fan of Rui-chan. Okay, this is another thing that kind of annoys me in these shoujo manga is she introduces another character who introduces some tension, right? So the reason that's sometimes annoying is, oh no, there's another person, now it's going to be a love triangle, will they be broken up? And the whole time I'm thinking, no, of course not. Of course they're going to stay together. And Matsuri does something really interesting with Rui-chan, where she's a kind of threat to the romance. She loves Megumi. She wants to get Megumi. But we don't have 20 volumes of, wondering will they, won't they. And then Rui actually is kind of like admirable. She's just not like a evil, gonna break him up type of bleepy bleep. So, Rui, after Suzuka disappeared, Rui was sort of raised with Megumi, and he was really nice to Rui because it was sort of like Rui became his replacement for Suzuka. He used to shower lots of love and affection on little Suzuka, so then he would shower lots of love and affection on little Rui, and so she interpreted this as, oh, he loves me, I'm going to come back and make him mine. So Megumi takes responsibility for his actions, and he talks to Rui and he explains the situation to her. Sometimes being nice results in being cruel. I treated Rui as a substitute for you after you disappeared. The need I felt to treasure you had to be focused somewhere. I'm sorry. So he talks to her like a normal person. He explains how he feels, and he tells her the truth. And then Rui still loves him. Rui still wants to be with him, but she sort of accepts that, okay, thank you for telling me the truth. Then there's this really, really genuinely funny thing where the girls have like a slap fight to see who will get Megumi. Not really. It's just they feel a bit competitive, and this panel's so ridiculous. No one fights like that, but maybe that's the point because they're fighting like girls. Matsuri Hino, you draw fights like a girl, and I love it. Then, like, after Megumi explains himself, then she says, okay, but then they slam the door on him, and she says, let's continue our fight. It's just perfect, because she's such an innocent little, sweetie, goody little two-shoes girl, and then Rui's got her diary of destruction. This is so weird. Okay, this is a great gag, too, that's set up visually. So, little faraway panel, tiny little drawing, sort of normal drawing, closer up, creepy, weird drawing that sort of is off-putting. So you know this is a setup for something. This could be a setup for her being scary and doing something evil, right? And then switcheroo, she doesn't want to fight anymore. She just wants to leave, and Suzuka's in that stupid fighting pose, ready to fight. Perfect comedy writing. So then Ruby just explains, look, I like Megumi. I have work to do. I don't have time to goof around. I'm going to let you two be together. If you screw this up and I get a chance to move in and get him, I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to try to, like, be a evil home wrecker for you two. Okay, there's a little short story at the end. This is another kind of typical thing where after the regular romance, they'll show you a little short story. And for a couple of these, I've actually liked the short story better than the romance because I didn't like the long, dragged out, plot contrivances of a lot of shoujo manga. This is a really good illustration of a manga artist starting out pretty good and then upping her game for when she gets a serialized series. So The Long Night of Father Christmas, this is worth reading just for the pure joy of how after school Christmas specially. It is like, I've never seen this many mentions of Christmas and Jesus in a manga. And she kind of roasts herself in her editorial comment. Let me find this. Oh yeah, this is a great comment. If you're not high-strung, I don't think you can draw manga. I've decided to live as carefree as possible. At least that's the ideal I have. At some point, we transitioned from captive hearts to the manga on this on the right. This is a one-shot story I wrote 3 years ago. It's embarrassing. I wrote this for myself. I'm usually stubborn about going to Christmas events, so this story was a message to myself to relax about things. But the story seems so stiff, I'm embarrassed. Oh, I should say goodbye. Thanks for reading. So I'm guessing she's a Buddhist or like really strict practitioner of Shinto or whatever. So the main boy character lives in a Buddhist temple and will not celebrate Christmas. The girl really loves Christmas. She's loved Christmas since she was a little kid, and they have this kind of cool relationship where they've been friends forever, and they kind of like argue like a married couple, and because they work well together, and everyone jokes, well, you two should be together, and they decide, okay, well, let's get together and let's try dating. And then dramatic revelation, I hate Christmas, dun dun da. And then he asks her, what's the meaning of Christmas? And she says, oh, well, it's Jesus' birthday. No, it's to make everyone on earth happy. Oh, you almost had it. You almost had it right. Okay, I gotta find it. So he explains that in his view, the point of Christmas is to make everyone happy. You guys are making Christmas represent unhappiness to me. Oh no! Will they find Christmas magic? So there's like a really obvious twist to Rue where she has this beautiful childhood memory of Christmas. He kind of pays attention to that, and it's predictable. He finds a way to help make her Christmas dream come true. At the end of the story, he gets over his hatred of Christmas. All right. Oh, and there's a beautiful little epilogue for the backstory for Kuro Nekomaru 2, where they explain that they don't get together, but at least they're together in the house and they're both alive. That was really sweet. Great. So Matsuri Hino is an example of someone who, like the short story, the Christmas story, it was kind of cheesy, it was kind of silly, kind of had some like, good, warm, fuzzy feelings to it. Her own criticism was correct. It was a little straightforward. I saw the twist coming. And she learned from her mistake and makes captive hearts. And then she avoids the dumb stuff that affects a lot of other shoujo manga. So it is silly. It's ridiculous, but it's very genuine. So we will continue to talk about this theme in Star Wars Darth Vader in the Ghost Prison from the Dark Horse era of comics. It's not canon. Who cares? I cannot wait to review this. All right, Normal Marmaduke fan, I love you guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell to receive notifications. Check out my Subscribe Star. I love you guys. I'll catch you later.